Hello, I am back from my 2-week social media hiatus and I am so excited. While I was away, I got a very exciting thing in the mail and I thought that I would celebrate coming back by opening it with you. So, about a couple weeks ago, I got an email that I thought was a spam email because I've never received any sort of free PR as a content creator. And I was super excited because it was from a publishing company and I love reading. As a PhD student, all I read is scientific articles all the time. So to be able to get books that are for fun reads is super exciting for me. And in times like these, I think the best way that we can be radical and that we can educate ourselves and also honestly just take time to learn from people of color is to read. And so this is why I'm so excited to open this package. So let's see. So I'm so excited to dig into this. This book is called Radical Self-Care, Helpers, Healers, and Changemakers by Nicole Steward. I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. And so I wanted to share a little bit about what this book is about, and I'll share a little bit about what the press release says to give you an idea of what this book is about. I was not paid in any way to review this or to even show this on social media, but I wanted to anyway because I think that it's really important to uplift our people of color that are sharing ways that, practical ways especially, that we can actually tackle these things like burnout, especially when you are trying to make positive social change. What I love especially about this is, and I've talked about this I think on one of my last videos, is that even though the term self-care, as it often is understood or operationalized in a more white capitalist a view, taking it from that context and really understanding self-care in the context of where it came from originally is radical. And so I'm really, really excited to read this book and see how it's defined by Nicole. I think what would be really interesting, I wanted to read a little bit of the preface to understand a little bit about the author if you'd be interested in reading this book. As I started my social work career more than 20 years ago, I began noticing the heaviness of the work and looked for ways to hold it. I knew it would be challenging work, but no one told me being a social worker would break my heart. And certainly, no one told me being a social worker might harm my health. There was no guidance on caring for myself amid the heaviness and heartbreak of this world, even in my graduate program. Once, I asked a professor how to handle the heaviness of working with child abuse, and the response was, "Well, occasionally when I get really overwhelmed, I take myself to the opera." That's cool, but that wasn't as helpful a response for a broke graduate student who had seen the devastating reality of child abuse and the lack of prevention, resources, or political will to protect children. I entered my career with solid social work skills, but without a foundation of support or a real understanding of the kind of care I needed as a social worker to hold the weight of the work that would become my life's calling. My work as a rape crisis counselor at the height of the Catholic Church abuse scandal in New England in the early 2000s left me facing my first real burnout. I found myself sacrificing my health and well-being to serve survivors with an internal sense of urgency I couldn't control. I had to save the world from child sexual abuse. This meant working long hours, being on call, and ignoring my own needs for food, sleep, bathroom breaks, etc., to be available for the deeply sensitive needs of victims' survivors. I was in a constant state of hypervigilance to meet the urgency of this work. Soon, I began experiencing health issues. My hair started falling out in clumps, rashes broke out all over my body, I had insomnia caused by intrusive nightmares about survivors and their stories, and I alternated between lacking an appetite and binge eating comfort food. Most insidiously, I had triggering of my own trauma history caused a shift in my worldview, causing me to see every man as a threat to the safety of women and children. I even jumped whenever my boyfriend, now husband, one of the safest men I know, touched me. I wasn't in my body, and when I spent time with loved ones, they would often tell me I wasn't there. I dissociated from myself as a form of protection from what I know now as vicarious trauma. In an effort to engage in self-care, I adopted the treat yourself ethics of self-care, spending money I didn't have on manicures, happy hours, massages, vacations, books, and random things that made me feel better in the moment but did nothing to alleviate the stress and trauma I was absorbing from my work. Buying into the commercialized capitalistic version of self-care only exacerbated my health issues towards addictions and unhealthy habits that landed me deep in credit card debt. And I was still burned out. It would take 2 more major burnouts, including being tested for lupus and getting shingles in my 30s, for me to realize that my attempts at self-care were not working and that I needed something more sustaining. I needed something that truly supported my mind, body, spirit, and heart in this work without draining my bank account, negatively impacting my health, or stimulating the need to chase adrenaline, dopamine hits, or the latest wellness trend. I needed to get out of survival mode, out of fight or flight mode. The result of my search for deeply rooted healing to support my mind, body, and spirit is the book you're reading now. I read and reread books by activists, feminist therapists, and revolutionaries which prompted the cultivation of radical self-care practices to encounter the constant dysregulation I experienced as a social worker. I began to research compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma, which allowed me to understand what was happening in my brain and body. I gave myself permission to center caring for myself amid my work, which felt all-encompassing. I found communities of fellow social workers, advocates, and other child welfare professionals, my allies and accomplices, who were also searching for answers to their dysregulation. I started by listening to and coming back into my body, which I had abandoned and disassociated from for the sake of serving others. On my yoga mat, the connection between movement and breath brought me back to myself. Yoga brought me individual healing on my mat and introduced me to a global community of yogis to support my healing journey. Oh, I love that. The poses helped me stand in my power both on the mat and at work. My experience with yoga prompted my exploration of meditation, breathwork, mindfulness, restorative practices, and sound healing practices in their respective communities, as additional supports for my healing and nervous system regulation. I reclaimed myself, my passion, and my purpose, but I did not do it alone. This is the essence of radical self-care. I think that is so important that even though these practices on an individual level are helpful, that Nicole's recognizing that this is really living and healing in community. This is the essence of radical self-care. We must initiate and actively engage in our own care, but we do not have to do it alone. So there are, a couple more pages of this, and just reading that, I already know this is going to be an amazing book. So thank you so much, Nicole Steward. And really thinking is, after I read this, I would like to chat with Nicole, and I'd like to share a little bit more about her story and talk a little bit more. And so if you're interested in that, let me know, and I can connect with Nicole and see what we can do in terms of answering any questions you might have for her on any of these topics, or just her personally and her story as well. But I would actually like to give a giveaway. So after I'm done this book, I'd like to give it away to one of the people in this community. So if you would like to read this book, let me know, and I will pick a person at random. It will be priority, so I would like to give it away to somebody that is a person of color or a visible minority. So if you'd like to read this book, please let me know in the comments, and I will pick out random after I'm done reading the book.